Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to jump right into this. We're not here to tell you, yes, there is such a thing as Bigfoot. We're just going to present some information, some sighting reports, some witness reports, evidence that we found out in the field. We're going to give you a chance for asking questions, and hopefully we'll try to answer them. So let's get started. Native Americans were the first to encounter the Sasquatch creatures on the North American continent, as evidenced by ancient cave drawings and totems. The very first written, documented case that we've been able to uncover is from the writings of Leif Erikson in the year 986 AD, when the Norsemen came to the New World. They called these creatures Skellring, which translated into barbarian. Now, for a barrel-chested, long-haired, bearded, I wasn't talking about you, Kelly, bearded Viking to call something else a barbarian, they must have really been a sight to behold. But they said they had a horrible scream, they had a terrible odor, and they towered over Erickson and his men. Explorer David Thompson in the year 1811, in what would later become Jasper, Alberta, stumbled upon a trackway. He actually stumbled, fell face first into the snow. That's supposed to be a joke. I didn't go there. He found a trackway that was, the track was 14 inches long but 8 inches wide. And the Native American guides that were with him were not at all excited about pursuing these tracks because they seemed to know what it was from. Thompson, on the other hand, thought it was from a very old grizzly bear, but he couldn't understand why the claws didn't show through. Possibly because maybe it wasn't a bear at all, it didn't have claws. Now, the first encounter in the state of Ohio was from a newspaper article in Gallia County in 1869. A young lady and her father were riding in a horse-drawn carriage, and they encountered a wild man. Said he goes naked, is covered with hair, is gigantic in height, and his eyes start from their sockets. He attacked the carriage, containing a man and his daughter a few days ago. He said to have bounded at the father, catching him in a grip like that of a vice and hurling him upon the earth, falling upon him and endeavoring to bite and scratch him. You have to guess what the bottom line says.
Like a wild animal.
Okay, helps here. But anyhow, the young lady actually had to get out of the carriage and pick up a rock and throw it, and luckily she hit the beast instead of her dad. But upon getting hit with the rock, it disappeared into the thicket. Now, the BFRO was established in 1995 by a man named Matt Moneymaker. And they have an excellent database. They don't have a good reputation often for getting back to witnesses. A lot of times people will have a sighting or encounter and they'll contact the BFRO, and quite often they don't follow up on it. A lot of the reports that we've received with our group were from people who first contacted BFRO and they didn't get back to them. But they do have an excellent database. Now, if you go to, let's use Ohio as an example, and you click on what county, or is this Holmes County or Wayne County? Are you online? Are you on?
No, no.
But if you click on, I can't read that from here, but I checked Wayne and Holmes both, and I didn't see anything right here in Shreve, but there was, one of the two counties had like 6 reports, and 5 of them were from the same area.
Holmes County.
But that doesn't mean that there's only been that many reports taken. That means that's the number of reports that the BFRO has actually sent an investigator out and they've investigated. So there could very well be other ones that we don't know about. Hopefully there'll be somebody here tonight who's had something happen and they want to talk about it. But right now, Ohio is in fifth position for the United States. And I believe that number was 290 when I checked last reports. Well, what does Bigfoot look like? Well, some people report them looking like a gorilla or ape-like, while others have reported them looking more human. Now, this is a still from the Patterson-Gimlin film, which incidentally just celebrated another anniversary a couple days ago. This was from 1967 from Bluff Creek, California. Okay, here's a sketch of a Bigfoot seen by eyewitness Dave Groves in the Allegheny National Forest. He had a very talented woman named Sibylla Irwin do this sketch. Now, Dave's story is in, I believe, my second book, Hidden Encounters. This one, I'm not sure who did that sketch, but it's an excellent job. But sometimes the witnesses claim what they saw looked like an ape or a gorilla, and other times, there's Sibylla Irwin. Other times they say what I saw looked like the Geico caveman or it looked like a Neanderthal man. These two books, written by David Paulides. Mr. Paulides also writes the Missing 411 series.
Yeah, I'm watching that.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well,
Very interesting.
before he did those, he did these two Bigfoot books. And we had him speak at our conference back in, what was that year, 2015, down at Burr Oak. But he did two Bigfoot books, and he went to the Hoopa Indian Reservation and talked to the elders and got permission to sit down with the eyewitnesses and speak to them and interview them for the book. And he's got a law enforcement background, and he took a fellow with him named Harvey Pratt that also worked in law enforcement, and Mr. Pratt was a sketch artist. So he would sit down and draw what the witness told him that he saw while David got the story. And these are some of the sketches. And if you look at some of these, they don't look ape-ish or monkey-ish. They look human. You know, that guy there, I'd say, yeah, I've seen him ride up and down the street on a Harley. And see, that one isn't even scary looking. But you got to keep in mind it might have been 7 or 8 feet tall and weighed 800 pounds. That was scary, but the face itself wasn't all that scary. This is a witness from Ina Falkenberry from Oklahoma, and I have her son's story in one of my books. I can't remember which one, but hers is unique because she said that the female creature had eyes like a cat. She looked at the pupils. Another one that looks like a man. A female who's probably never put a bra on in her life. Now, here's another interesting thing. Most of the reports we get from witnesses say, well, it looked, it was 7.5 feet tall, it was dark brown or black, and it was built like a football player. It was 4 feet across at the shoulders, and, 7.5 to 8 feet tall, and just huge muscles. On the other hand, sometimes they say, well, what I saw was very tall and lanky, built more like a basketball player, like an NBA power forward or something, 6'10" or 7 foot. Now, the drawing on, or the picture on the right is actually from a story in my first book. Lorena Cunningham had a sighting. She's actually had 2 sightings 20 years apart, and then she had a third encounter with one in a barn. But the second creature she saw was what she's holding here. This was a model statue that she made. She said it was kind of a grayish color. She thought it was a male, an older one. And she said it wasn't big and bulky across the shoulders. It was long and lean like a basketball player. She also had a sighting 20 years before that of a female. And if you see the doll on the table right below the screen, that's what she saw the first time. She said it was 7.5 feet tall. I'm going to tell her story later on. 7.5 feet tall, daytime sighting, female. She could see the breasts on it, very muscular, not at all built like the one she saw 20 years later. Bigfoot color variations. Typically, witnesses say when they saw was black or dark brown. Sometimes there's a reddish tint to the hair. But we also get salt and pepper and even white specimens. All sizes are reported, 10 feet, 9 feet, clear down to juveniles and infants. Okay, here's some eyewitness sketches of some of the reports I've taken over the years. This is from one from the third book I wrote. This was out of Tennessee. Okay, this is Lorena Cunningham again. That's the pencil drawing, I guess it is, or painting of the female she saw in 1984. And then 20 years later, a completely different creature she saw in 2004 in January. And it was very close together. I'd say, what would you guess, Sean? Less than a mile?
It's not a mile apart, but she wasn't that far from where she was first sighted.
Yeah, it was Noble County. It's south of Cambridge, a little bit, one county south of Guernsey County. And this was the third incident where she was in the barn feeding horses, and there was one in the barn up in the hayloft over top of her, and she didn't know it. She was actually on the program Finding Bigfoot, if you've seen that with Bobo and Renee and Cliff. The program that we're talking about is called, was it Buckeye Bigfoot? And it aired in, I think, 2012. They, I actually got a call from the producer, I think in 2011. I was in the car going through the bank drive-through, and I got this call that said California, and whatever the number was, 818 or something. I don't know anybody in California. It's before the telemarketers got my cell phone number. And it turned out to be this producer, and she found my name on the internet. Luckily, it wasn't in the post office with my picture. But she said they were going to be coming to Cambridge and staying for a week, and they're going to be shooting video at Salt Fork, and they wanted to know if I knew of any witnesses to Bigfoot. And I said, yeah, I sure do. So I hooked them up with Lorena, and we got to meet the crew and everything and hang out with them a little bit. This is from the Eddie Kidd sighting here. This was Salt Fork on the Morgan's Knob Loop Trail. They were on, I can never remember the name of that show.
Monsters and Mysteries.
Yeah, Monsters and Mysteries.
Destination.
Okay. But this is the older daughter's drawing, and what on the left is the actual tree that the creature was peeking around from behind, and that's her drawing. And then the little girl, this is about what I'd draw. But it's the same, got the same shape of the tree, and it's positioned in the same way. Now the boy actually saw it when it wasn't behind the tree. He said it was chasing after a deer instead of walking fast. Kind of looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy a little bit. This is from a report I took from Ashtabula County in 2013. This is from Salt Fork, a juvenile. In 2016, the feet apparently were in the grass, or it didn't have any feet, maybe a lawnmower accident or something. You didn't draw them in the drawing.
Maybe too big to fit on the page.
Probably. It is Bigfoot. Yeah. Some more eyewitness drawings from the Rocky Fork Road area of Salt Fork State Park. I have quite a few from that area. It's a very strange area. This is from a story, the first story in my fourth book, the one with the blue cover of a dead Bigfoot seen along Interstate 70 between Cambridge and Byesville. And the man was not able to stop because of the traffic being so heavy, but he was on the phone with his wife and he called her and told her about it. When he came back after he got off work, it was gone, completely gone, cleaned up. There was no blood, no hair, no nothing. He said the area had been, he called it sanitized. Another sketch from John Talmadge, Portage County, Ohio. Okay, we don't have time to read all these, but if some of you have purchased this book tonight, and others, there's handouts up here on this table right here, and it says forward, and there's things on there that I thought was very helpful, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll mention a few of them. Now these,
You got some slides
okay, these are things that people have told me that they've heard or experienced. They've heard wood knocks. Bigfoot is a very masterful individual at intimidation. If he wants you to leave an area, he's got several ways of doing it. If you were hiking in the woods or hunting or whatever, and you encountered one and they just want to be left alone, some of the things they might do would be throw rocks or pebbles or something to try to get you to leave. Or next, people have talked about feelings of being watched, the hair on their arms or back of their neck standing up. They've seen eyes shine in the dark woods. Sometimes people have looked up and seen something standing in the yard looking in at them. You know, if you're in the house after dark and it's, you know, you've got a light on inside, whether it's your TV or your computer monitor, and the interior is illuminated and there's a window where something, well, that's my reflection. And look in, they will do this because they have a very curious side.
Have they been known to break into houses?
Not really break in, but there are some stories, but that's really not their demeanor.
I'm not gonna be able to do the dishes after dark again.
No, you want footprints found. The one on the left is from the Ringer property. This is about 5 or 6 miles from Salt Fork. We talked about that one in the first book. The next one is from the, can't remember that guy's name, Clark, and I can't remember what book that's in. But it was, the man came back from bowling one night and went out to his wood pile behind the house, and he had dozens of these tracks all over the yard. And we think what happened was he'd been putting corn out for the deer, and there were a number of deer tracks all over the backyard, and then a set of Bigfoot tracks. There were many, many, many tracks, but we think they were all from the same animal, and it was apparently chasing these deer, trying to catch deer. And there was no evidence of it having been successful. But some of the strides were, you could see where the strides increased as it picked up speed running. But it went down into a creek and back up. And do you have any of those other pictures on that slide? The one where...
The story, which is further down the line.
Okay. But, yeah.
Oh, here we go.
And see how they're in a straight line. That's typically what we find with Bigfoot tracks. It's one almost directly in front of the other, and then another one up above that. When they walk, they don't have a staggered gait like people do. It's one in front of the other, like a girl on a balance beam or someone on a tightrope. The one on the right with the dollar bill was from Salt Fork. We forgot to take the tape measure, and so we put the dollar bill down to show the size because it's roughly 6 inches long. One on the left is from Skingham County. It got deteriorated from the snow and the wind blowing snow across it. You can see where the toes were. There we are checking the width of it. There we've got the tape measure. I just took it from Shauna because she could never remember at night. So it's never happened again since that first time there. I'm checking the width. And there again, you've got the straight inline pattern. This was from the Ringer property. These tracks were 19 to 20 inches long, and it was about 5 feet from the toe of the bottom track up to the heel of the one in front of it. Tree structures found. This is what we refer to as a pinwheel or asterisk structure. This was Salt Fork. Tree blind structure. We think that was constructed by them to conceal themselves in so they could ambush deer. It was built right by a deer trail. Some more, some more tree structures. This is an archway from Salt Fork where 2 saplings were woven together and continued to grow that way. A nest. This is from Kenmore. It's a suburb of Akron. Is it Canton or Akron?
Akron.
Jody Cook and George Clapison were called up there to do a investigation. People had a sighting, and they discovered this igloo-shaped nest. And I don't think they found any hair or anything. And I think they said it might have smelled really bad. I don't think they found tracks or hair. Tree twist, what I believe this is the males will leave this as like a marker or calling card. Somewhat like a tomcat or a dog will pee on a tree or something to mark their territory to let the other males know that this is my area, keep out. Inverted trees, I wasn't even aware of this until I read about it in a few books and then saw some television programs. And what they're doing here again, I don't know. I have to guess and say possibly they do this to mark a territory, if I was to see this, and there's absolutely no way that it was done, caused by men, and they've checked these trees. Some of these trees have been found with no marks on them, where there've been chains around them or machinery or anything. So if something big enough and strong enough did that, it must be just showing its strength and how powerful it is. Maybe it means keep out, or I'm the boss of these woods, something like that. Dead animals found. This was a deer that a man in Pittsburgh found in Salt Fork. The jaws had been opened way past where they should have been. The belly was ripped open and the guts were laying out on the ground, and the liver was missing. And it's found in this little cave area. It goes way back in under there. There he is talking about it. Rock stacks. This is from Cocosing River up in the Mount Vernon area. This prospector was up there panning for gold, and he worked this same area one day and spent the night in his tent or camper and went back the next day, and he kept seeing these rocks stacked up like this. Here's another one he circled, and there was nobody up there but him. And it's thought that Bigfoot will do this, and there again, what it means, I'm not actually sure. Some sort of a marker or something. A hunter found this down in Virginia. They have a lease on this property. He said they've heard wood knocks and screams and stuff down there. And I said, well, whatever put that rock on that tree had to have a hand to pick it up and put it there. If you can eliminate humans as being the guilty culprit, then it has to be something else with a hand. An example of some hair that was found in Burns County on the top strand of the barbed wire fence. We sent some examples of it in to Melba Caption when she was doing her study for DNA analysis. Our sample didn't contain the follicle and they couldn't get DNA from it. Here's another example of a bow hunter down in Athens County. He actually did find tracks all around the area he was hunting, and I believe he said he got a rock or tree branch thrown at him, but he didn't actually see the creature. But he did find this hair snagged all over the top of this fence. And you know if his story's been printed in one of my books or not, I can't remember. It might be in the board. Yeah, a large pile of feces found. Some people that are skeptics, you know, I said, well, if the whole thing is bogus, then how did they make a big pile of poop and make it that big around? I mean, who does that?
I like a little thumbs up there.
Yeah. Some pictures from a lady from Belmont County that had one under her window. She could hear the breathing. She was too afraid to get up and look. But her son actually did have one or two sightings of the creature. Well, she did catch a glimpse. I forgot this. She did catch a glimpse of something one night when she came home and drove up the driveway and opened the garage door. She said something went around the back of the garage and she saw like from the knee down and it was hairy. And she hurried up and got out of the car and ran into the house. I said, you didn't go investigate? I didn't. They're very attracted to children. We're still going to save time and tell that Lorena Cunningham story. That's the one on the left. The incident on the right is from a story from my third book. If we have time, we might tell that. But they're extremely curious about children. Men, they don't really care for men too much because a lot of times when they run into male species, humans, and the fella is out in the woods hunting and he's carrying a weapon. But they tolerate women much more and they're fascinated with children. They're very curious about kids. Damaged fences and property. I don't really have time to go into this story, but that'll be in the book that's due to come out next year. That's from I think New York. This was a hand print, and there's actually a dent there. A guy got his vehicle slapped over the salt fork one night. Rock throwing. This is another tactic they like to use for intimidation to try to get people to leave if they should encounter the creatures. And he's got several things he can do to get you to vamoose. Throwing rocks is one. Now usually they don't throw it and actually hit you with it, but it comes close enough to get your attention and hopefully you'll say, okay, it's time to get out of here.
It's a bluffing.
But besides the rock throwing, they'll scream, they'll shake trees, they can produce a horrible odor, as strong as a skunk's. Unusual animal behavior, livestock afraid to enter a barn. We've had a couple stories in my books about that very same thing. This is the second incident. Horses wouldn't come in the barn. campsites disturbed, coolers open, food missing, habituation. Some homeowners provide food, shelter, and gifts to the Bigfoot. This can't be dangerous because if they condition the creatures to expect handouts and then stop, Bigfoot can react negatively. And I can't stress that enough. It's just like if you start feeding, the example I like to use, I used to feed raccoons marshmallow. Well, they started eating the bird seed and corn. And then I got the bright idea to throw cookies and marshmallows. And then I actually got to where I could sit on the back porch and hand feed marshmallows and cookies to the raccoons. And the coons, they told one another. They didn't, I don't know if they had Facebook for coons or what. I had mama coons and little baby coons and all that, so cute. Well, it got to be too much because I'd be in bed and I'd hear them banging on the back door wanting fed, and it's like, it's midnight, you guys, go to bed. And they came in the house through the cat door and they chewed holes in the cat food bag. And I'm the one that started the whole thing, so I had to put a stop to it. So I sure as heck wouldn't want to get something like that dependent on me to feed it and have it coming around all the time. I mean, what happens if you get the flu and you're laid up and you can't get out of bed and the thing's out there and it's hungry? So be careful what you start.
You finally got audited by the tax man blaming it as
Yeah. Other examples of evidence: very strong smells or odors such as trash, wet dog, sewer, rotten eggs, sulfur, etc. Large shadows or silhouettes seen lurking around the residence. Prowlers at night. Something large slapping or hitting the side of the house. A lot of people talk about that, and I think some of that refers back to the creatures coming around and eating food that you throw out for the stray cats or the possums or something. They'll find it too, and they'll start eating it. And then if they come around and there's nothing out there, they'll let you know. Unusual behavior from dogs and cats. Food missing from pet bowls. Food missing from the freezer or fridge on the porch. Heavy equipment, tools missing from a yard or outside shed or barn, often too heavy for a single human to move. I think some of them do this. They have a little bit of prankster in them, and I think they'll deliberately take things and hide them and put them someplace else, and then possibly stand back in the tree line and watch you scratch your head, wondering where in the devil you put that shovel you just had a minute ago, or the log chain when you're looking around. Mushrooms missing from a favorite hunting spot, often with large tracks found in the vicinity. Milk missing from dairy cows if the cow's already been milked. Chickens, ducks, sheep, rabbits missing or killed, sometimes with their bellies ripped open and the liver missing. Trees pushed over. Locomotion. Witnesses have described the movement as they saw as gliding or floating. Bigfoot typically is seen on 2 feet like a man, however, they're just as adept to be down on 4, and they're extremely fast. I've had people claim to have driven 35 miles an hour in their car, and things were keeping up with them right alongside the road. They have a poor reputation with dogs. I think the reason behind that is you're in the house watching the news and the dog's outside, being a good little watchdog, Bigfoot sneaking around. He's going to steal apples off your tree or get into the barn and see what he can find in there to steal. And Rover starts to bark. Oh, now he's alerted the homeowner, and Wyatt gets up and goes over to the gun case and gets his 12 gauge out. Boom. I think that's why they don't like dogs, is because they'll give them away. So the best thing a dog can do is shut up, hide under the porch, or get under the car and just be quiet. Usually that will save the dog. Bigfoot behavior: intimidation, screaming, rock or log throwing, pushing trees over, tree shaking, growling, chest thumping, stalking, swaying side to side, producing an odor, Same thing as some of these YouTube videos where the people don't get the toy in their Happy Meal at McDonald's and they go in and argue with the help. Why no bones or bodies? Bigfoot conspiracy theories. People usually ask, well, you know, if they've seen these things for 1,000 years, how come we don't have bodies or bones? Well, all I can do is give you half a dozen answers and you pick one. They bury their dead. They're like the Navy SEALs. You know, they won't leave a man behind. If one of their kind falls, they'll take it away. Another theory is this is the biggest thing out there. There's no other creatures in the woods that's big enough and strong enough, mean enough to take down a Bigfoot. So the only thing it's going to worry about as far as killing it would be old age, disease, or an accident. If it's say it's got some disease and it knows it doesn't have long to live, some people think that they'll go off to the deepest, darkest recesses of the woods to die where you'll never find them. Once the body is down, you know, it's quickly consumed by vultures and possums and anything, you know, mice and rodents that eat the bones, and the acid in the soil will dissolve whatever's left of it. Another theory is that the government knows full well about these things and they've been hiding it. You know, they said when Mount St. Helens blew up back in whatever year it was, I can't remember, but there were several of these creatures killed and some even wounded very seriously but not dead, and the government came in and took the things away and swore everyone to secrecy. Another theory is that they're interdimensional and they can enter a portal, come and go as they please. So I don't know, take your pick. I do think that there have been creatures found dead, and for whatever reason, we don't have. Another example is, have you ever seen these pictures of these large bones or skeletons that the Smithsonian has, and then they conveniently end up in the basement and they can't find them anymore? So, okay, let's get into some eyewitness reports. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions on anything we covered? I know we went through it fast, but we kind of had to.
Well, I was wondering back there when they showed that lady and that man in that buggy or whatever it was, and they attacked it. I didn't know why it would have done that. Was there a reason? Were they doing something? They went up there and
The one from Gallia County?
where the lady, they said that the lady jumped out and that showed pictures.
I don't know why it attacked it. Maybe they stopped. This is just a guess. Maybe they're riding to town or whatever, and they happened to stop, and the creature was hiding right in that vicinity, and maybe it had a little one with it or something, and it became nervous because they were there, and so it came out and tried to scare them away, because that's really not typical behavior.
Well, that's why I asked, because all the reports have showed that they've never done anything. They're not trying to hit you with a rock, trying to scare you. And all of a sudden they done that, and I just wondered if maybe they might have done something or.
Yeah, I don't know, but typically they aren't going to attack you. But you know, if you were to get in between one and its little one, you know, you could have a different story altogether. Okay, let's talk about Lorena Cunningham. The gal on the right is the producer, Natalie, and in the red is Lorena Cunningham. Now, which story you want to do?
This is the first
Let's see.
July 1984.
Okay. Lorena had three kids. She had two girls, about 6 and 4, and a baby boy. And the children had been asking their mom to take them to this playground. It's a little tiny town called Sharon, and the schoolhouse is now, I think, the Grange Hall. So it was July, and it was evening, but it was still daylight. So the kids are on the equipment, two girls, and Lorena's holding the baby boy. Excuse me, and she hears something to the left of that pole down in the woods, cracking brush and breaking brush. Something's coming closer. Well, she thinks possibly a cow got out and it was coming up that way. So she's standing there off of the left side of the screen watching for the cow to come. Instead of the cow, this is what comes out of the brush. She was about 30 or 35 feet away. She said it was female, maybe 7.5 feet tall, very muscular, built like a linebacker for the NFL. Huge biceps, triceps, the pectoral muscles, the thighs, just everything, rippled with muscles. And it was watching her kids. And now, she did the drawing here, actually, and the drawing shows she's got all 3 kids. But when it first took place, she just had the baby. Well, she had to get the girls' attention to come to her, so finally, one little girl noticed that mom's not watching them and listening to them. She's looking at something else, so she runs over to her mother, and she says, "Mom, is that Bigfoot?" And Lorena says, "I don't know. It could be. Don't run. Don't scare it." Well, then the other girl, after a minute or two, she comes running over. And I said, "Well, tell me what kind of expression was on its face." And she said, "Well, it didn't look like it was mad or mean or anything. It actually had a grin on its face. It was enjoying what it was seeing because they're interested in kids." She said, "I was just terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was going to kill us and eat us, and that'd be the end of it." So she's telling her girls, she says, "No, we're going to back away and walk home." And, they're within walking distance of their home where this was. So she said she saw different expressions come across the creature's face, but none of them were vicious or mean or anything like that. She was close enough to see the fingernails. She could see the wind blowing the hair across its face. She didn't smell anything. She said it didn't make a sound other than when it walked in there and, broke brush and stuff. So when they started to walk away, she says, just walk backwards and keep your eyes on it because I'm afraid it'll chase us. So as they backed away, it disappeared back into the brush and she could hear it walking off. So they came to her grandmother's house and she said, "Let's go in there. That's closer than our house." Well, when they got to the yard, her cousin's dog, he had a Doberman tied up. And she said that dog was always mean and never afraid of anything, and it was just terrified. It was digging a hole trying to hide under the house because it knew the thing was there. So that was her first encounter with one of these creatures. And it took place in July of 1984, and then 20 years later, she sees another one, not in exactly the same spot, but very close to the same spot. Then she had this third incident, the barn encounter, a couple of weeks after her sighting of the second creature. That's the one where she went in to feed the horses, and the horses wouldn't come in the barn, and none of the barn cats were around, which she thought was really strange. She said one gelding ran in, and he stopped and threw his head up and turned around and right back out into the pasture he went. And remember, this is in January, there's nothing growing out in the pasture. So if they want to eat, they got to come to the barn so she can feed them. So she's got the pitchfork in her hand, and she thought, well, I'm here to feed horses. That's what I'm going to do. And she's pitching the hay down in the stalls, and she heard something overhead, and she's looking around, and she can see the boards over top of her head, and they actually were sagging from the weight of the thing walking back and forth. She said her hair stood up on the back of her neck, and she knew why the horses wouldn't come in the barn, and she knew why the cats wouldn't. And she said she even grabbed a second pitchfork. She thought, if that thing comes down out of there after me, I'm going to go down fighting. So that was her, and that was the most terrifying of all three of the encounters. She said she actually didn't even see it, the third one. We think it was possibly the one that she saw the second time, just a couple of weeks before. And sadly, the farm has been sold, and they cut the timber off of it, and I think they tore the barn and house both down. Somebody else owns it. This is a picture from my book. The creature that she saw in 2004, the second one, actually walked along that tree line, along the fence there, and then when it got to the corner, it came walking down this way towards the house, and she was outside and saw it and yelled out to it after she regained her composure. She said, "Where do you think you're going?" Because it was coming like right towards the house, and it threw its head back and took off and went back up the other way. I got time maybe for one more story, and then we'll do some more questions and answers. I didn't have a sighting in my books right here locally, but this isn't too awful far away. This man didn't want his name used, so we'll call him Ed. And this was from Tuscarora River sighting about 25 years ago. We spoke at either Dover or New Philly, and this guy was in the audience. He gave me his name and number.
He saw it 25 years ago. We didn't speak there 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's when it happened.
I know the way you phrased it. Never mind.
You want to tell this story? He worked midnights. He got off work 7 o'clock in the morning. His boss said, Ed, that wasn't his real name, that's what, anyway. He said, Charlie called in, he's sick, and he wanted to know if you would run his paycheck over to St. Clairsville because they need some groceries and got to pay some bills. No problem, guys. So at 7:15 in the morning, Ed's driving down Route 36, and he comes to the bridge there, and he pulls over because he likes to fish, and it's such a beautiful morning, not like when we took the picture. But this would have been late fall, maybe this time of year. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday morning. No traffic whatsoever. He stops on the bridge, shut the car off, slid over in the seat, and he's looking out the window at the water down below because he likes to fish, and he's got a canoe, and he fishes that. Well, he saw something on the left-hand bank. There's a cornfield on either side, or at least there was then. Something was coming through that corn, and the corn stalks were moving, and he couldn't actually tell what it was, but it was dark. When it got to the edge of the cornfield, it came down the bank. At first he thought it was a bear, but it was coming down backwards. He said, whoa, bear wouldn't do that. It must be a person. Well, when it got to the bottom, it turned around, and it wasn't a person either. It was a Bigfoot. He said it walked into the water and it was crossing the river. Well, he said there's a hole out there about 6 feet deep, according to his chart. And he said when it got into that hole, he could still see from like here up, which would have made the thing maybe 8 feet tall. when it got past that deep area, it actually came clear out of the water up onto a sandbar. He could see the whole animal except for the feet, kind of like that picture that Don drew where he didn't have any feet on there because they were hid in the grass. Well, this one, the feet were still in the water. He said at that time he could tell that it was a female because he could see the breasts. And he said it was walking with that arm swing like the Patterson-Gimlin film. Well, he kind of fidgeted a little bit in the car, and the creature saw him moving. I said, well, what did it do? He said, well, she stared at me and gave me a real dirty look. I said, well, you were kind of watching her skinny dip. She didn't like that, apparently. I said, well, she wasn't happy about me sitting there watching her. Well, she kept on walking across. When she got to the other bank, she pulled herself up out with her hand on a tree limb, climbed up that bank, and disappeared into the corn on that side of the river. So I asked him if he ever told anybody. He said, well, I tried to tell some of the people at work, and they laughed at me and thought I'd been drinking or was on drugs or something, just made fun of me. He said, well, some of them even, they said, well, did you go back and look for tracks? He says, no. Why would I have to do that? I said, well, to prove it was there. He said, well, I don't need to prove I saw the stupid thing. It was there. We got to go back there and go up in that cornfield and look, because there'd be mud up in there. He said, listen, she wasn't happy with me. And he said, I've had 5-foot females mad at me. I don't want to go up in 9-foot tall corn with an 8-foot mad female. So that was the story. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes, sir.
Has there ever been any evidence that Bigfoot's ability to make fire or use it?
I've never read where they've made fire, but I've read where they've come along after somebody had built a campfire and they still had some embers, and they pull a stick out that's still on fire and kind of wave it around and play with it.
They have a massive fire.
Well,
Not to cook anything.
I haven't encountered that in my readings, but that doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't. As far as making and using tools, I haven't heard that. But they are very intelligent. But as far as them making, people say, well, they apparently don't need it, for cooking or for warmth. They eat stuff raw, and I know they will go, like, if it gets really cold out, they will use a barn or an abandoned house or a cave or something like that. I think we showed the tracks earlier from the Ringer property. That was from the winter where the cows were afraid to go into the barn in the winter to be fed. And the owner couldn't figure out why until after they'd actually gone in the barn and fed the cows, who still stood out in the pasture, the snow-covered pasture in fall. They wouldn't come in. When the owner walked out of the barn, that's when they saw the big tracks of one of these things leaving the barn, where it had gone in there during the night to get in out of the cold. So,
It's always just one, it's never two.
well, I've taken reports from, matter of fact, I just took the last talk we did was down in Hillsborough, and I actually got a call while we were talking, and I talked to the guy the next day, and his wife and daughter had a sighting of 3. This was in Athens County. So they are seeing, family units. More questions? Yes, sir.
Just to confirm what you were saying, I talked to Lorena Cunningham too, and she told me all 3 of those stories, and she said that she was actually within 25 to 30 feet from that female, and that really enjoyed the children, had a smile on his face.
Yeah. And Lorena, I've heard her tell that story dozens and dozens of times, and she's never changed a word of it. But one thing she told me was she thought one thought that came to mind was maybe this female creature had a little one and lost it, and it was going to take hers. And that was something, when she was convinced it wasn't going to kill them and eat them, she thought, well, maybe it was going to kidnap my kids. How am I going to keep it from doing that? But they are fascinated with children. More questions?
Where do you think they originated from? I mean, I've got so many different, ideas, but where do you actually think that they actually
Well,
originated?
From what I've read, where they originated from, I can't say, but they think they came across the Bering Strait and migrated down into the Americas. But where they started out from, I don't know. There's been reports of some kind of undiscovered primate on 6 of the 7 continents. We haven't found anything on Antarctica so far. In all the different continents, except that one shows something. Yes.
Where are they the most prevalent in the United States?
Um,
All over, or just?
you have that DFRO map or no? Washington State.
Yeah, we're right place.
Yeah, Ohio's 5th. Washington State, I believe, is 1st, and then California, and then Florida, and then Illinois, then Ohio, and Oregon is up in there somewhere, but it's under Ohio. And that's kind of a misleading number because I have friends that belong to the BFRO, and they said there is a generic database that anybody can get on and access and read, but these BFRO investigators are privy to another database that have hundreds, if not thousands, of reports, and they won't be officially recognized until one of their investigators actually does an investigation. And then once that's done, then it'll get added to the regular database. But you can pull that up and look. What'd you say? Holmes County. What's the other one? What? Wayne.
There's nothing.
Reports.
But that just means that there's been none investigated. There's probably been some submitted, but they haven't investigated.
Have you ever had an encounter?
I haven't had a sighting, but we've found tracks. We've found hair. I've heard a yell. She and I were close enough to one in Coshocton County to smell it. She's heard the chatter. But did you get your recorder out? Has anybody heard the Ohio howl?
Yeah.
We'll play that. We're really running short on time, but just play the Ohio howl. This is from Columbiana County, recorded by Matt Moneymaker, and I can't remember the year. 94. It kind of sounds like the air raid siren or the tornado siren.
It's not. It's too low for that. The pitch. Pitch of the howl or tornado.
Okay, any more?
Pitch of the howl is too low for it.
Any more questions?
Have you worked with Matt Moneymaker?
I met them all, and I sat down and talked to them over top of a map and told them some places to try at Salt Fork. We got along fine with them. I know Matt kind of gets a bad reputation.
He goes out for all of it.
Yeah, but they treated us fine, and we didn't have any problem with it.
Yeah, I thought they were very nice.
Yeah,
Bo does actually sound like a Bigfoot when he does his house.
Yeah.
But it is pretty cool.
okay, well, I appreciate everybody coming tonight and your questions, and I still have some books if anybody wants to get a book. We've got some stuff up here that you can look at, and there's handouts, and if anybody has had an encounter or sighting or something like that, if you want to give me contact information, I will get a hold of you. And thank you again for showing up.